Good evening, friends, and welcome to Dark Historian. Tonight, I've brought you a quiet, calming tale, a gentle bedtime, sleep story for wakeful minds and wandering hearts. This video is part of the Boring History for Sleep Stories series, made to help you unwind and fall asleep fast. In this episode, I'll share soothing sleep stories that invite your thoughts to slow down and your body to let go. If your mind is still busy, or if peace feels far away, you've found the right place. So gently close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let these sleep-inducing chronicles of history carry you into rest. You're silent. Night begins now, with Dark Historian. Story 1. Wool Socks and Cold Trenches. The quiet battle against winter in the Ardennes. Good evening, friends. Tonight, as you settle beneath your blanket and let the soft hum of the night surround you, we'll drift gently into a different time. A time of wool socks, icy breaths, and the hush of a distant forest. Dim your lights, close your eyes if you wish, and allow the distant scent of pine and cold earth to guide you softly away from your day. If this slow journey brings you comfort, perhaps you'll tap like and subscribe, but only if it feels right, like a small nod shared under a starlit sky. You find yourself in the quiet heart of the Ardennes. Sometime in December of 1944, snow rests on the branches like dusted sugar, and the sky is a dull pewter grey. The cold is not the kind that stings sharply and is gone. It's a deep, slow ache, wrapping itself around your bones and pressing into your thoughts. Your feet are wrapped in heavy wool socks, each thread worn down from weeks of wear, and inside your boots, the dampness has long since claimed victory over warmth. Every step feels like moving through soft clay, and yet you keep walking, because the day has begun, a day of waiting. The forest around you is alive with subtle noises, the distant creak of a tree bending under snow, a muffled cough from another soldier nearby, the slow, rhythmic drip of melting frost sliding off a helmet edge. You adjust your scarf, feeling the rough wool against your neck. You're reminded of home, perhaps a grandmother's knitting needles clicking near a fireplace, the smell of pine and cinnamon drifting through an old farmhouse. Here, there, are no such comforts, only the collective hush of men trying not to be found, each footstep calculated and careful. In the trench ahead, you spot Private Jenkins. He's scraping frost off his rifle, the motion hypnotic and slow, as though he's whittling away at an old branch rather than preparing a weapon. He looks up and gives you a tired smile, the kind that says, "We're still here, somehow." Breakfast is a chunk of bread gone stiff as a plank, paired with a tin of meat that trembles with congealed fat when you open it. You bite down carefully, feeling the cold seep into your teeth. It's less a meal and more a ritual, a moment to remind you that you are still alive, that the day needs to be endured one frozen bite at a time. You sit on a small ledge within the trench, your breath creating small clouds in the air. Nearby, a medic gently unwraps a soldier's foot, revealing swollen toes tinged with a greyish hue. Trench foot, the quiet enemy that creeps up without bullets or bombs. The medic applies ointment with practiced, gentle hands, as though he's tending to a fragile bird. The soldier stares into the distance, eyes soft and unfocused, as if trying to drift beyond the line of frostbitten trees. Later, you write a letter home. Your pencil is short, barely the length of your thumb, and you have to warm it between your palms to keep it from cracking. You begin with the same lines you always do. "Dearest Ma, I am well, even if you aren't. You pause often, listening to the subtle orchestra around you, the wind weaving through pine needles, a distant artillery echo like thunder far away, the faint rustle of a comrade shifting in his sleep. There's a kind of stillness here that feels ancient, as if the forest has seen these men come and go for centuries, each set of footprints covered swiftly by new snow. In this waiting, you learn the art of being present in the smallest moments, the warmth of your breath on your fingers, the slight comfort of a dry patch of blanket against your cheek, the shared silence that somehow binds you all tighter than words ever could. Night begins to fall without ceremony, a slow slide into deeper grey. Lanterns are forbidden. Any small glow could draw eyes that mean harm. So you learn to listen more than see. You listen to the soft snores of the man next to you, to the wind's lullaby, to your own heart slowing down as sleep approaches. You pull your wool blanket closer, feeling each thread press against your face like an old friend's embrace. In this darkness, you might ask yourself, what is survival, truly? Is it the beating of a heart, the warmth of a shared ration, the unspoken promise to see tomorrow's dawn? You do not answer. You simply breathe, letting the quiet questions drift out into the cold night air, carried by the silent snowflakes. And as you rest, the forest continues its gentle vigil above you, a canopy of branches holding the stars at bay, while you wonder quietly if the socks will be dry tomorrow, if your toes will still obey you when you rise again. The dawn comes not in golden waves, but as a thin, uncertain light that seeps into the world slowly, like water finding its way through cracked stone. You lie still at first, wrapped in your wool blanket that smells faintly of damp earth and sweat, listening for signs that it is safe to emerge from the shallow warmth. A few moments pass before you hear the soft, muffled movements of your fellow soldiers. One coughs, deep and rattling, as though trying to clear not just his lungs, but the heavy silence lodged inside them. Another fumbles with his boots, muttering curses under his breath, curses so quiet they seem more like prayers. You open your eyes and watch as frost dances along the edge of your helmet, tracing delicate, temporary patterns. The wool socks you so carefully dried overnight are only slightly less damp than before, but you slide them on anyway, wincing at the cold that slices up your legs like a thin blade. You stretch, feeling every joint complain, each bone creaking like the beams of an old barn in a windstorm. Breakfast is an echo of yesterday. Hard bread, a few spoonfuls of powdered eggs, reconstituted into a greyish mass, and tepid coffee, poured from a dented tin pot. You sip slowly, cherishing the warmth as it slides down your throat. Each swallow feels like an act of defiance against the cold, a quiet reminder that warmth still exists. Somewhere as you chew, your thoughts wander. Home. Perhaps your mother is boiling water for laundry, or your father is reading the morning paper by the fire. Maybe your younger siblings are still tangled in quilts, dreaming of snowball fights and Christmas candy. Here, though, there are no carols, no smell of cinnamon, only the sharp scent of gun oil and the distant murmur of unseen enemies. You stand, adjusting your webbing and checking your canteen. The water inside is icy, and you brace yourself before taking a sip. Around you, others move in hushed choreography, men wiping down rifles, tightening belts, securing helmets. Jenkins waves at you, his gloves missing a fingertip, exposing a raw, pink sliver of skin that trembles in the morning air. Today's duty is to reinforce the trench walls, which have begun to collapse under the weight of accumulated snow and the endless freeze-thaw cycle. You pick up a small, entrenching tool, the handle worn smooth from countless hands. You press it into the icy ground, each motion slow and deliberate. The soil is hard as stone at first, then gives way to a sticky, dark mud that clings to your gloves. You fall into a kind of trance as you work. Scoop, toss, scoop, toss. The rhythm reminds you of summer chores back home, perhaps hoeing rows in a vegetable garden or shoveling snow off the farmhouse roof. Here, the reward is not fresh tomatoes or the sight of a cleared path, but the simple satisfaction of knowing your trench will hold for another night, nearby. A pair of soldiers try to start a small fire in a metal helmet, cupping their hands around the flicker to protect it from the breeze. You watch as the smoke curls lazily into the air, vanishing almost before it can be seen. One of them curses softly as the flame dies, and the other shakes his head, resigned. They try again, the ritual continuing with patient desperation. Lunch is called, though lunch might be too generous a word. You receive a can of meat stew, its gelatinous top layer shimmering dully in the pale light. You stir it with the handle of your spoon, watching as it slowly liquefies. The taste is bland, but you savor each bite, each chew grounding you in the present moment. Afterward, you gather with a few others for a letter-writing break. Jenkins writes to his wife, describing the trees in gentle detail, as if he were on a nature walk rather than crouched in a frozen trench. Another young soldier writes to his mother about how he misses her apple pie, drawing a tiny doodle of a pie slice in the margin. You begin your own letter, hesitating over each word. You don't want to worry them, so you choose your phrases carefully. We keep each other warm, you write. The forest is quiet most days. A sudden crack breaks the stillness. The distant report of a rifle. Everyone freezes. You can almost hear hearts stop beating, lungs halt mid-breath. You press your back against the trench wall, fingers curled tightly around your helmet strap. Silence returns, thick and heavy, as though the forest itself is holding its breath. Minutes crawl by before you all slowly exhale, shoulders relaxing only slightly. The afternoon drifts onward, measured in small, unremarkable tasks. You mend a tear in your blanket using a borrowed needle and coarse thread. You scrub your mess tin clean with a handful of snow, the icy granules numbing your fingers. You help Jenkins adjust his bootlaces, his fingers too stiff to manage alone. As dusk begins its quiet descent, a medic passes through, checking on frostbite and handing out sulfur powder. You watch as he inspects each foot, each hand, nodding solemnly, his brow furrowed with concern. You marvel at his patience, the tenderness with which he handles each injured limb. Even in war, there is room for gentleness, for hands that heal. Instead of harm, dinner is another repetition. A square of chocolate from a ration pack, some hardtack biscuits, and weak coffee. You all eat in near silence, each man lost in his own thoughts. Someone starts to hum softly, a hymn, perhaps, or a tune from a childhood lullaby. The sound is tentative, like a candle flame flickering in a drafty hall. You find yourself humming along, the melody a fragile bridge to a world beyond this frozen forest. Night arrives with its familiar cold embrace. You slip into your blanket. Socks slightly drier than they were this morning, but still clammy against your skin. You curl into yourself, trying to preserve as much warmth as possible. Around you, the others settle in, too, their shapes little more than dark lumps under blankets, each a tiny island in a vast sea of snow and pine. Your mind drifts as you listen to the night sounds, the wind sighing through branches, the faint scuttle of a mouse along the trench floor, the slow, deep breathing of the man beside you. You think of home, of warmth, of a kitchen window fogged from baking pies. You think of summer fields buzzing with cicadas, of autumn leaves crunching underfoot. You think of a future beyond these trenches, though you don't know what shape it might take. A question arises in your mind as sleep edges closer. Is this hardship a test, or simply another passage in the quiet book of human endurance? You do not answer. Instead, you let the question hover like a soft fog above a morning lake. Tomorrow will come with its own small battles, frozen laces to untie, rations to endure, letters to compose, trenches to mend. And you will face each one as you have today, slowly, deliberately, with a quiet resilience that is both ordinary and extraordinary. As your eyelids grow heavy, you imagine the forest breathing with you, each tree a silent sentinel standing guard. Over your fragile warmth, you surrender to the night slowly, your thoughts dissolving into the hush that blankets the snow-covered world. And so, in this twilight between waking and sleep, you remain, a figure curled in wool, a heartbeat echoing. Beneath layers of cloth and frost, a quiet vow to endure just one more day. Morning arrives as a faint glow rather than a sunrise. You wake not to an alarm, but to the subtle shuffling of boots on frozen soil, to the faint rustle of a fellow soldier rising in the trench beside you. Your body aches in quiet protest as you stretch beneath your heavy wool blanket. For a moment, you imagine you're still in your own bed at home, that warm patch of pillow under your cheek. Then your eyes open fully, and the grey sky above reminds you of where you truly are. The day begins with the ritual of unfreezing your laces. You tug at them carefully, working each knot loose with fingers that feel like stiff twigs. Steam rises from your breath in slow curls as you exhale. You flex your toes inside the damp socks, each movement feeling distant and reluctant, like a memory struggling to surface. Breakfast is announced with a low call along the line today. It's powdered milk rehydrated into a pale slurry and a slab of bread that tastes more like cardboard than grain. You dip it carefully into the milk, feeling the soggy bite melt against your tongue. Around you, the men eat in silence, their eyes lowered, each one lost in a private morning prayer or a silent conversation with home. After eating, you're assigned to patrol the narrow perimeter beyond the trench. You climb out cautiously, the sound of your boots muffled in the thick snow. You move slowly, eyes scanning the tree line, ears tuned to every creak and sigh of the forest. Snow clings to your helmet, the rim forming a tiny crown of frost. The forest feels timeless here. Tall pines lean toward each other, heavy with snow that droops like the heads of sleeping giants. You imagine each tree as an old guardian, a witness. 2 countless winters, their branches brushing against the same frozen ground long before you arrived. Your breath feels like a thin veil between you and this ancient quiet. Along the patrol route, you find small traces of life, a rabbit's delicate footprints looping through the snow, the crushed remains of an old cigarette butt left behind by a previous watch. You pause to kneel and inspect them, feeling as though you were reading an unspoken diary left in the snow. At noon, you return to the trench. Jenkins greets you with a weary grin, offering a half-filled canteen. You sip, grateful for the cold water, even though it sharpens the chill in your bones. Together, you spend the next hour reinforcing a section of the trench wall that has sagged inward. The mud oozes like slow molasses under your fingers, each handful heavy and reluctant. You pass the time with small stories, a shared memory of Last summer's baseball game, a funny mishap with a sergeant's hat, a half-forgotten joke that somehow still makes you both laugh. Afterward, Jenkins brings out a small deck of cards. You play a game, each move slow and contemplative. The cards are soft around the edges, the colors faded from being handled by many hands before yours. Each shuffle sounds like the turning of an old book page in a quiet library. A medic stops by to check on your feet, gently pressing against your toes, feeling for warmth, for signs of the creeping gray. His hands are deft and gentle, as though he were handling porcelain rather than battered flesh. He applies ointment and wraps your feet in a fresh layer of gauze. The moment feels almost sacred, an island of tenderness amid the frozen landscape. Dinner arrives as dusk starts to melt into the sky. The meal is a thin stew with a scattering of vegetables, carrots, potatoes, some unidentifiable lumps that might once have been meat. You eat slowly, savoring each spoonful, letting the warmth spread through your chest. Someone produces a small harmonica, and a soft, meandering tune drifts through the trench. The melody carries no urgency, no bright joy, only a quiet drifting. Melancholy that wraps around your thoughts like an old quilt. As night deepens, a light snow begins to fall, flakes settling on your helmet, your blanket, your eyelashes. You look up and watch them float down, each flake a tiny universe tumbling silently through the black. You feel the urge to catch one on your tongue, like a child again, but instead you just watch, letting the cold find its way gently into your bones. Beside you, Jenkins starts writing another letter. You watch his pencil move across the page, the lines slow and deliberate. He stops, looks up, then begins again, each word a small act of resistance against despair. You decide to write till your pencil is even shorter now, but you cradle it. Carefully, you describe the snow, the way it makes the trees look like they're dressed in cathedral robes. You mention the cards, the medic, the taste of the thin stew. You do not write about the cold, or the frostbite, or the distant echo of shells. Some truths you carry only in your heart. When you finish, you tuck the letter into your pack, close to your chest. You hope it will reach home someday, that it will be read under a warm lamp, perhaps with a cat curled nearby, the soft ticking of a clock in the background. You imagine the sound of a kettle whistling in the kitchen, the scent of tea drifting through the house as your mother reads your words aloud. Sleep comes slowly tonight. You lie still, eyes open to the dark sky above. Somewhere beyond the trees, distant artillery booms, a low rumble that trembles through the earth like an old drumbeat. You count the seconds between each echo, measuring the space between fear and acceptance. Eventually, your breathing deepens. You feel the slight warmth of your own body pooling beneath the blanket, your heartbeat echoing in your ears. You drift through memories, a summer creek, the taste of ripe cherries, a new pair of shoes on the first day of school. Each memory is a lantern you hold aloft in the darkness, guiding you away from the present, if only for a moment, when your eyes finally close. The snow continues to fall in delicate layers, covering your trench like a silent quilt. Above, the stars blink in and out behind drifting clouds, distant and impartial witnesses to your small struggle. In this quiet darkness, you realize survival is not a grand, heroic act. It is 1,000 small decisions: to eat when you have no appetite, to dry your socks no matter how damp the air, to write a letter even when you can't find the right words. It is choosing, again and again, to keep breathing into the cold. Tomorrow will come with its quiet rituals, the thawing of boots, the shuffle of cards, the first hesitant sip of weak coffee. You will wake and wrap your wool socks tightly, slide your feet into heavy boots, and step into another day that demands your silent perseverance as you slip further into sleep. Your last thought floats like a soft feather, that perhaps, in the end, survival is simply the art of listening to the hush of the snow, to the rhythm of your own breath, to the gentle whispers of a world still turning beyond the trench. And so, beneath a moon wrapped in drifting clouds, you surrender at last to the slow, healing pull of dreams, your wool blanket rising and falling with each quiet breath. Story 2. Canteens, letters, and the rattle of tin cups, mess tents, and midnight thoughts. The night air is cool and heavy as you step out of your tent. The faint glow of a lantern flickering behind you. You clutch your canteen to your chest, feeling the cold metal seep into your palms, anchoring you in this hushed midnight hour. You take a deep breath, tasting the quiet, a mixture of stale canvas, distant wood smoke, and the faint scent of old grease clinging to mess tins. Here, in the stillness of a camp at rest, there is a soft symphony you learn to hear only after many nights. The low murmur of a guard's boots pacing near the perimeter, the shuffle of a soldier turning in his sleep, the whisper of wind curling around tents like a slow lullaby. Your canteen is almost empty. You tip it back, feeling the last drops trickle over your tongue, cool and metallic. The water is far from fresh. Sometimes it tastes of iron, sometimes of canvas, but each swallow feels like a small lifeline, a fragile thread tying you back to the ordinary dot in the faint moonlight. You see the outline of the mess tent, a large sagging shape against the muted sky. The canvas walls ripple gently with each breeze, making it look alive, as though breathing along with the soldiers within. Inside, the floor is a patchwork of muddy footprints and stray bits of straw. Long tables are covered in tin cups, dented, plates, and empty ration cans stacked in haphazard towers. You move quietly, stepping over a fallen spoon, your boots brushing against the cold ground. You find a place on a long bench and sit, feeling the wood give slightly under your weight. You set your canteen down beside you, listening to the quiet clink as it touches the bench. Nearby, a lone lantern burns low, casting golden puddles of light that shimmer across the table's scratched surface. Around you, a few others linger. In the tent, Jenkins is here too, his head resting on folded arms, his breath deep and even. A young private named Mills slowly stirs the dregs of coffee at the bottom of his tin cup, tracing tiny circles as if scrying for answers in the darkness. Another man leans back, staring at the roof of the tent as though it might offer him a map home. The mess tent is more than a place to eat. It is a sanctuary of small rituals. Each cup of coffee, each spoonful of rehydrated potatoes is a quiet ceremony of survival. You remember your first days here, the harsh clang of pots, the rush for hot food, the shouted orders echoing off canvas walls. Over time, though, the rush faded into a kind of sleepy rhythm, like waves rolling against a shore at night. You reach into your pocket and pull out a letter from home, the paper soft from repeated unfolding. You smooth it carefully on the table, tracing the lines with your fingertip. The handwriting is uneven, a sign that your younger brother tried to write most of it himself. He talks about the chickens at home, the stubborn cow who refuses to be milked, the new patch of wildflowers by the well. As you read, your mind drifts. You imagine the wooden fence around the yard, the sound of crickets humming in the fields at dusk, the warmth of a kitchen lit by an oil lamp. You picture your mother's hands, flour-dusted and gentle. Your father's calloused palms gripping the porch, railing as he watches the sun sink below the trees. You fold the letter slowly and tuck it back into your pocket, close to your chest. A comforting weight, a secret warmth only you can feel. Mills looks up at you, his eyes heavy with fatigue. He lifts his tin cup slightly in greeting before taking another slow sip. You nod back, the exchange wordless but full. In this place, small gestures become entire conversations. On the table in front of you sits a pile of rationed biscuits, each one hard as a stone. You break a piece off carefully, slipping it into your mouth, feeling it dissolve slowly against your tongue. The taste is bland, dusty almost, but you savor it, letting it become a quiet moment of grounding. Outside, a dog barks faintly, then falls silent. The guards shift in the shadows beyond the tent walls, their movements as soft as drifting snow. A few tents down, someone coughs, a deep, rattling sound that stirs a brief wave of concern before fading into the night's hush. You think about the cups, each one different, some dented beyond recognition, others bearing the faint remnants of a painted name or a scratched-in drawing. Each cup carries stories, a first meal in camp, a shared joke over watery stew, the comfort of hot coffee after a long watch. You run your fingers over your own cup, feeling each dent, each small groove, as though they were the lines of an old familiar poem. At the far end of the table, a man begins to hum. The tune is low and wandering, a melody without clear beginning or end. It floats over the table like a thin mist, settling softly on each listener. You close your eyes and let the sound wash over you, feeling your shoulders relax. Your heart beats slow to match the gentle rise and fall of the song. A lantern flickers as someone adjusts the wick. The shadows dance along the walls, tall and wavering, like ghosts from a dream. You watch them move, thinking how the mess tent feels less like a place in a war and more like an old kitchen at midnight. The kind where someone might sit up late with tea, tracing steam curls into the dark. You pick up your canteen again, shaking it gently. A few drops rattle inside, a soft percussion that echoes in the quiet. You take one last sip, savoring the metallic temps, imagining it is spring water from a mountain stream back home. Another soldier enters, boots leaving wet impressions on the ground. He moves to the stove at the far side, pours himself a scoop of coffee, and settles into a corner. You exchange a brief glance, a silent nod that says, "We are here. We are still breathing." The minutes drift by, measured in sips and slow breaths. You lean your head against the edge of the table, feeling the wood cool against your temple. The hum continues in the background, now joined by a faint tapping, someone drumming their fingers absently against a tin plate. In this half-waking state, your mind meanders. You remember the warmth of a summer barn, hay rustling under your back as you watched motes of dust dance in sunbeams. You remember the smell of rain on dry earth, the soft murmur of a creek winding through fields. You think of all the letters waiting to be written, each one a thin bridge across the sea. Words come slowly here, not because there is nothing to say, but because each sentence must be weighed carefully, like fragile eggs carried in cupped hands. Above, the tent roof moves slightly with each gust of wind. You watch it sway, a thin barrier between you and the stars. A humble ceiling for midnight confessions and quiet company. Someone gets up to leave, footsteps creaking on the wooden planks. You hear the flap of the tent door as it swings shut, the night air rushing in briefly before settling again. The lanterns shiver, shadows chase each other across the walls. Then all returns to a gentle equilibrium. You look at your hands, palms open on the table, the lines crossing them like tiny rivers. You wonder what they will hold tomorrow: a rifle, a pen, a tin cup, perhaps another letter from home. You wonder if these hands will someday hold a child's head, or a partner's cheek, or the last rose of a late summer garden. The thought comforts you more than any ration could. Eventually, you rise, gathering your canteen and your dented cup. You move softly through the tent, each step measured, each breath slow and full. You slip out into the night, the cool air greeting you like an old friend. The stars are clearer now, a tapestry of pinpricks above the dark tree line. You pause, head tilted back, the world shrinking to just you and those faraway fires. You imagine each star as a tiny campfire, each one holding its own mess tent, its own tired souls nursing tin cups and tracing letters on creased paper. You turn toward your sleeping tent, the canvas flaps moving gently as if in a slow dance. You step inside, settling into your cot, pulling your blanket up around your shoulders as your eyes close. The sounds of the mess tent echo softly in your mind. The hush of the lantern flame, the ghostly hum of a song, the gentle rattle of tin against wood. You breathe deeply, your heart settling into a slow, steady rhythm. Each beat a quiet promise to keep moving forward. And as the night folds around you, you wonder softly if every tin cup could tell its story. How many small, humble epics would fill the world? The morning wakes you softly. There is no sharp bugle, no harsh shout to break your dreams. Instead, it's the slow shuffle of boots outside, the thin beams of greyish light slipping through the tent seams, and the faint smell of reheated coffee. Drifting in from somewhere nearby, you stir beneath your blanket, your hands still clutching the last warmth of the night. Your shoulders are stiff, your back carries the silent complaint of a cot too thin for comfort. But as you rise, each movement feels deliberate, like a quiet vow to keep going, to see another dawn, to sip another cup. You slip your boots on, feeling the cold embrace your toes. You flex them gently, encouraging the blood to wake, the air. Inside the tent is heavy with the breath of sleeping men, the soft rustle of blankets, and the occasional muffled sigh. You step outside, greeted by the early grey, a sky neither day nor night, a soft in-between that feels like the pause between heartbeats. Near the mess tent, you see a line of men gathered already, each holding their dented cups, their breath rising in small clouds. Jenkins stands near the front, rocking lightly on his heels, his eyes distant as though already miles away, perhaps imagining a kitchen back home where the coffee is hot and sweet, poured by a mother or a lover's careful. Hans, do you join the line, your cup hanging from your belt by a frayed loop of string? As you wait, you glance around. A crow hops across a patch of frozen ground nearby, pecking at something unseen. Its feathers glisten like spilled ink under the shy morning light. You watch it for a long moment, almost hypnotized by its quiet insistence, its simple, steady presence in a world full of noise and confusion. When your turn comes, you hand over your cup to the cook, a heavy-set man with soot-blackened fingers, and an apron that looks like it has absorbed years of spilled stories. He ladles out a thin, steaming liquid that dares to call itself coffee. You thank him softly, your voice hoarse from the cold, and step aside to take your first sip. The warmth hits your throat, filling you with a brief, flickering glow. You savor it, even as the taste carries the ghost of burnt grounds and metal pots. Around you, others cradle their cups the way one might hold a small bird, careful, tender, reverent. After breakfast, some men gather around a barrel, washing their faces with icy water. You approach, dipping your hands in, gasping as the cold shocks your skin into sharp, tingling awareness. You splash your face, rubbing away the night's haze, feeling each droplet slide like tiny needles down your neck. You dry your face with the corner of your sleeve, your skin now raw and alive, the chill singing softly through your bones. A few steps away, Jenkins is writing again, perched on an overturned crate with his cup balanced on his knee. You watch him, pause often, his pencil hovering mid-air like a hesitant sparrow. You imagine the words forming slowly in his mind, each one a small offering, each one carrying a quiet hope that it will reach warm, waiting hands somewhere far beyond this foggy dawn. Nearby, a group of soldiers sort through mailbags, calling out names that echo faintly through the morning air. Each name is a small spark, a momentary flare of life. When someone's name is called, a ripple of warmth spreads outward. A letter handed over becomes more than paper. It is a thin lifeline back to gardens, porches, kitchens with ticking clocks. Your name is not called today. You feel the small pang of disappointment settle into your chest, a familiar weight you've learned to carry like an extra canteen. You nod slightly to yourself, adjusting the blanket draped over your shoulders. Perhaps tomorrow you decide to take a walk to the edge of the camp. Beyond the mess tent, past a line of leaning trees, the ground opens up to a soft, rolling field now coated in frost. Your boots crunch in the half-frozen grass, each step slow and deliberate. You pause often to listen, a distant dog barking, the low rustle of leaves, the occasional chirp of a brave winter bird at the edge of the field. You find a small pile of discarded ration tins, stacked like a crude monument. You kneel down, examining each one as though reading the pages of a book left open in the wind. Rust crawls along their edges, and old labels have faded into ghostly smudges. You imagine the meals they once held, the silent company they offered. In cold evenings beside the tent, you pick one up and turn it over in your hands, feeling its weight, its thinness. You think of how many letters were written after these tins were emptied, how many stories were whispered, how many moments of laughter and silence shared over these humble meals. Returning to camp, you find Jenkins still writing, his brow furrowed. In concentration, you sit down beside him without a word, your presence a quiet promise. After a while, he looks up and offers a half smile. You ask, with a tilt of your chin, if he's writing to his wife. He nods. You both lapse into silence again, the kind that feels more like a soft blanket than a barrier. Eventually, he hands you a scrap of paper, an unfinished line from a letter, a stray thought perhaps too heavy to commit fully. You read it slowly. I miss the smell of rain on the porch roof more than I thought possible. You fold it carefully and hand it back, offering a small, understanding nod. He tucks it into his pocket like a secret talisman. Lunch is called, and you rise together, moving toward the tent in step. The meal is meager, a scoop of beans, a slice of dark bread, and a thin smear of jam that barely hints at sweetness. But as you chew, each bite feels like an anchor. You focus on the slow grind of your teeth, the quiet clink of metal spoons against tin. After lunch, you gather for a mail writing session. You find a clean patch of ground and spread your blanket. The pencil feels heavy in your hand, as though It carries not just lead, but the weight of all the words you've kept inside. You begin slowly, dear Ma. You describe the field you visited, the frost glittering like scattered stars, the lone crow keeping watch. You mention Jenkins, though not by name, a friend who writes to his wife with words as careful as carved wood. You write about the coffee, the cold water that woke your face, the tin cups that hold more than they appear. Each sentence drifts from your pencil like a thin thread, weaving connections across an ocean, across time zones and heartbeats. You pause often to look up, to watch the men round you bent over their own papers, each one writing his own small bridge home. As you write, you hear the rattle of a tin cup rolling somewhere nearby. You look over to see Mills chasing after it, his laughter soft but bright in the grey afternoon. He catches it at last, holding it up triumphantly before returning to his blanket. The sound is small, but it feels like a tiny bell ringing in a silent church, a bright, momentary spark that flickers long after the echo fades. By the time you finish your letter, the sun has begun its slow descent, pulling long shadows across the ground. You fold the paper carefully, slipping it into an envelope, sealing it with a quick, firm press of your thumb. You hold it for a moment before handing it off to the mail runner, watching as it joins the growing stack of stories waiting to be carried away. As dusk settles, the mess tent begins to fill again, cups and spoons clinking like a soft percussion ensemble. You join the line once more, your fingers curling around your empty cup, already imagining the comfort of warm liquid sliding down your throat. Tonight's dinner is a thin vegetable stew, with bits of potato and carrot floating like tiny islands. You savor each spoonful, letting it linger on your tongue before swallowing. Around you, low murmurs weave through the air like gentle river currents. Someone tells a story about a stray dog that followed them during a march. Another recalls a church bell that rang endlessly in a distant village, as though trying to wake a sleeping world after dinner. You sit with Jenkins and Mills near the tent flap. The stars are beginning to prick through the darkening sky, faint at first, then gradually bolder. You tilt your head back, tracing constellations you barely remember the names of, each one a silent witness to countless nights like this one. Mills starts to hum again, a low, wandering tune that drifts through the air like a thread of smoke. Jenkins joins softly, the two voices intertwining in a fragile harmony that seems to hold the night together. You close your eyes, letting their melody wrap around you, feeling it settle into your bones, slow and warm. When the song fades, you open your eyes to see a gentle glow on Mills's face, a rare softness that feels like moonlight on water. Jenkins is staring into his cup, turning it slowly as though reading tea leaves, perhaps looking for the shape of home. You rise and stretch, feeling the gentle pull of your muscles. You bid them good night with a quiet nod, stepping outside into the cool night air. Your breath puffs out in soft clouds as you walk slowly back to your tent, each step measured and silent. Inside, you arrange your blanket, your cup, your canteen small, comforting rituals that remind you of evenings back home, of folding sheets, turning down lamps, tucking stray books onto shelves. You slip under the blanket, curling onto your side, your hands tucked close to your chest. You listen to the distant sounds of the camp, the low hum of voices, the faint clatter of pots being cleaned, the rhythmic patter of a guard's footsteps. As your eyes grow heavy, you think about the letters written today, about the stories hidden in tin cups, about the quiet strength woven into each sip and each careful line on paper. You breathe deeply, the scent of canvas and earth filling your lungs, the warmth of your blanket cradling you gently. The dawn feels hesitant today, as though the sun itself cannot decide whether to rise or remain curled beneath the horizon's blanket. You open your eyes slowly, greeted by the pale, uncertain light seeping through the seams of the tent dot. Your body is stiff, joints crackling softly as you stretch. Each small movement feels like a quiet promise to yourself. I am still here. I can still move. You slip out from under your blanket, your breath immediately swirling into the cold morning air. The tent is still, only the faint rustle of Mills turning over in his cot and the gentle snore of Jenkins breaking the hush. You sit at the edge of your cot, running your fingers along the dented edge of your tin cup. You feel each groove, each tiny scar, the record of countless mornings like this one. Outside, the camp is waking slowly. Boots scrape against the frozen ground. Low voices weave in and out of the fog like drifting ghosts. You slip your boots, uncarefully wiggling your toes inside the thick wool socks. You wrap your blanket around your shoulders like a shawl and step outside, the early light washing over you in thin, silver streaks dot near the mess tent. The cooks have already begun their slow ritual. You see the glow of lanterns inside, shadows, moving like quiet dancers behind the canvas walls. A wisp of smoke rises into the grey sky, carrying the scent of burnt coffee and warming stew, a humble perfume that somehow feels like home. You stand for a while, watching. The line is beginning to form, a soft line of men, each one holding his battered cup, each face shaped by longing and fatigue. You join them, feeling the quiet camaraderie ripple gently through the morning air. When your turn comes, you hand over your cup. The cook, his cheeks ruddy and eyes gentle despite the early hour, pours out a ladle of steaming liquid. You nod your thanks, stepping aside carefully so as not to spill even a single drop. You cradle your cup with both hands, drawing it close to your face. The heat against your chilled skin feels almost like an embrace. You blow on it softly, watching. Small ripples tremble across the surface. Then, slowly, you take your first sip. The taste is the same, bitter, slightly burned, with the faintest hint of tin. But the warmth spreads through your chest like a slow sunrise. Each swallow a quiet reminder that you are alive, that the world is still turning. However softly you find a place to sit on an overturned crate near the mess tent, your blanket pooling round your shoulders, you sip slowly, listening to the morning's small symphony, the murmur of men greeting each other in low voices, the scrape of spoons against metal bowls, the rhythmic creak of the tent flaps shifting in the breeze. Jenkins joins you not long after, his own cup steaming gently. He sits beside you, close enough that your shoulders brush. For a long time, you say nothing. There is no need, the shared warmth, the shared silence, speak more clearly than any words. After the morning meal, the camp begins its daily shuffle. Men head off to check supplies, to mend fences, to inspect weapons and pack ammunition. You help Jenkins fold extra blankets, the wool stiff from repeated freezing and thawing. You fold each one carefully, patting them down as though smoothing a loved one's hair. You and Jenkins work quietly, moving from tent to tent, gathering stray blankets, forgotten socks, lost gloves. Each item feels like a fragment of a life, paused in motion, each thread woven with quiet resilience. At one tent, you find a small bundle of letters tucked inside a boot. You glance at Jenkins, who gives a small nod. You set the letters carefully on the cot, placing a folded blanket beside them, a small silent gesture of care. Later, you help Mills scrub pots behind the mess tent. The water is frigid, each plunge of your hands stealing breath from your lungs. You watch as Mills hums softly, his tune floating into the morning air like a pale thread. His voice is low and wandering, each note stretched out as if trying to touch something beyond the edge of the frost. As you work, your thoughts drift. You remember the kitchen back home, the hiss of a kettle, the smell of freshly baked bread, the soft hum of your mother's favorite hymn. You see your father seated by the window, reading a newspaper with his glasses perched low on his nose, pausing every now and then to glance out at the yard. You scrub each pot slowly, turning it in your hands, feeling the grooves and dents. Each one carries its own story, its own quiet testament to countless meals shared under countless different skies. You rinse them carefully, setting each aside with a gentle clink, as though tucking them in for a long nap. Once the pots are done, Mills offers you a thin slice of bread he's saved. You take it gratefully, chewing slowly, feeling each crumb soften against your tongue. You share a small nod, the kind that says, "We are here. We are still holding on." After cleanup, you return to your tent to rest. Jenkins is there, writing again. You watch his pencil move, each stroke deliberate and measured. He pauses often, tapping the eraser against his lip, searching for the exact word that might bridge the distance between this frozen field and his wife's warm kitchen. You sit quietly, picking up your own pencil. You begin another letter, this time describing the morning's hush, the scent of smoke, the softness of shared silences. You describe the cups and blankets as though they were old friends, the way the first sip of coffee feels like a small sunrise inside your chest. You pause, listening to Jenkins's pencil scratching softly beside you. The two of you become twin metronomes, keeping time in the quiet rhythm of written words. You think about the thousands of other letters being penned in this very moment, each one a small echo bouncing across oceans and time zones. While Jenkins folds his letter carefully, smoothing each edge with the side of his hand, he sets it aside, looking at you with a tired smile. You exchange a small nod before setting your own pencil down. The two of you step outside, feeling the late afternoon sun weakly touch your faces. It offers no real warmth, but its pale glow carries a fragile kind of comfort. You walk slowly toward the mess tent, listening to the wind play with the edges of the canvas like a shy musician plucking at harp strings. Inside the tent, a few men are gathered around a pot of weak broth. You take a bowl, savoring each warm spoonful. The broth is thin, but it tastes of onions and something earthy, something that reminds you of root cellars and muddy boots after spring planting. Someone begins to tell a story, a half-remembered legend about a ghostly horse that roams the countryside at night, seeking lost riders. The men listen, their faces lit by the soft glow of lanterns, their eyes half closed, as though the story is a lullaby rather than a tale of fear. You close your eyes, listening to the words wrap around you, feeling the slow, heavy pull of drowsiness creep into your limbs. The hum of voices, the occasional clatter of a spoon, the gentle rustle of canvas all melt into a single, soothing melody. As evening descends, Jenkins leans against a support pole, humming softly. You join him, letting the quiet tune seep into your bones. The song has no beginning or end, it simply exists. Like the slow drift of fog over a still lake, you rise after a while, stepping outside into the deepening blue. The stars are just beginning to appear, shy and tentative at first, then bolder as the night deepens. You tilt your head back, tracing patterns in the sky, imagining them as letters written by an unseen hand back in your tent. You arrange your blanket carefully, smoothing each fold as though tucking in a dear friend. You set your tin cup beside you, close enough to touch if you need to anchor yourself in the dark. You lie down, pulling the blanket over your shoulders, feeling the soft weight settle around you. You listen to the muffled chorus of the camp outside, the soft clink of a cup being set down, the low murmur of a final conversation, the slow, steady footfalls of a guard making his rounds. Your breath deepens, your thoughts begin to drift. You see letters flying across oceans like pale birds, tin cups clinking like tiny bells in midnight chapels, men humming soft songs to the stars as you slip into the slow embrace of sleep. You wonder softly if every quiet moment, every gentle sip, every small hum could be gathered and strung together, would they form a song strong enough to guide us all home? Your fingers curl around the edge of your blanket, your heartbeat slows, and the world folds itself around you like a gentle lullaby. You are here, you are still breathing, and tomorrow there will be another cup, another letter, another quiet sunrise to greet. Story 3. The itch of wool and the whisper of needles, sewing kits, socks, and solitude. You awaken before dawn, a grey hush filling the tent like a thin fog. You lie there for a moment, feeling the slight weight of your blanket on your chest, the gentle ache in your shoulders from yesterday's march. Your hand drifts to your side, brushing against a small cloth bundle, your sewing kit. Even in the dim light, you can picture its contents clearly, the neatly wound spools of thread, the bent needle you keep out of habit, a small pair of scissors with dulled tips. To an outsider, it might seem a trivial thing, but to you, and to every soldier who has marched past blistered feet and torn sleeves, this kit is a quiet lifeline. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb Mills, who is snoring. Softly, his face pressed into the crook of his arm. Jenkins stirs but does not wake, turning over with a small sigh that sounds almost like a whispered name. You swing your legs over the edge of the cot and reach for the kit. Your fingers work it open with practiced familiarity, each motion a small ritual, like a farmer sharpening a scythe before sunrise. The first thing you touch is a spool, of course, olive green thread. You unwind a bit, feeling its slight resistance as it slips through your fingers. You think of all the socks you've mended with this thread, each stitch a tiny knot holding the world together just a little longer. Outside, the first hints of dawn begin to bloom, thin streaks of pale blue and silver pushing against the stubborn night. You step out into this new day, your kit held against your chest. The air bites at your cheeks, a sharp reminder that warmth is earned here, stitch by patient stitch. You make your way to a small bench near the mess tent, the wood slick with dew. You settle yourself there, laying the sewing kit across your lap, your breath rising in quiet puffs. Around you, the camp stirs slowly, as if unsure whether to fully wake or retreat back into the softness of dreams. You inspect your socks first. The heels are thin, small holes beginning to yawn open like tiny mouths hungry for warmth. You thread your needle carefully, squinting in the dim light, your fingers moving almost of their own accord. The needle dips in and out, each pull a soft heartbeat beneath your fingertips. With each stitch, your mind drifts elsewhere to a porch back home, where your mother used to darn socks beside the evening lamp, her hands moving in, a rhythm that seemed older than time itself. You remember sitting at her feet, watching the thread loop and disappear, feeling that curious hush of shared tasks. Your stitches here are not so different, though your bench is colder and your audience is only the early morning crows perched on tent poles. You work slowly, letting each loop and not anchor you to the moment, to the quiet pulse of life beneath the grey sky nearby. A kettle begins to boil, the rising steam curling like delicate fingers into the air. You smell the faint promise of morning coffee, thin and harsh, but still a bomb against the frost. You pause, look up, and watch the steam dance away into the pale blue. Once the socks are mended, you turn to your uniform. A tear along the sleeve, small but persistent, threatens to widen with each day's march. You tilt your head, examining it as a sculptor might study a block of marble. You begin to stitch, your hands moving with the same care a priest might use when turning fragile pages of an ancient scripture. Each pull of the thread feels like breathing, in, out, in, out, in, out. Around you, the camp slowly rouses itself, boots thudding against the frozen ground. The low murmur of early greetings, the occasional clatter of a dropped cup. Jenkins approaches, carrying 2 tin cups. He hands you one with a nod. You set your sewing aside and wrap your hands around the warm metal, feeling the heat soak into your fingers. You sip slowly. The coffee is bitter and weak, but it tastes of morning, of movement, of staying alive. Jenkins sits beside you, his gaze drifting over the field beyond the tents. Neither of you speaks. The silence is too thick and lovely to break. After a while, Jenkins glances at your sewing kit and smiles faintly. He reaches into his own pocket, pulling out a small scrap of cloth, a piece of his shirt collar that has frayed nearly beyond repair. You take it from him without a word, tucking it into your lap as you pick up your needle again. As you stitch his collar, your hands move with the same tender caution you might offer a sleeping child. Each pass of the needle is a quiet vow to keep going, to stay whole, to hold each thread of life together as long as possible. While you work, Jenkins hums a low tune. The sound drifts around you, curling into the chill air like smoke from a distant chimney. You listen to each note stretch and waver, your hands continuing their slow dance over the soft, tired fabric. By the time you finish, the camp is fully alive. Men gather in small knots, tending to gear, sharing last swigs from canteens, whispering fragments of letters to each other. A few make small jokes, their laughter carrying brief warmth that flickers and fades like a struck match. Jenkins tries on his mended collar, running his fingers along the new seam. He gives you a small, grateful nod, a look that says more than any spoken thanks ever could. You set your needle aside, carefully folding your thread and slipping the small scissors back into their pocket. Later, after a short meal of cold bread and tinned meat, you gather with a few others for a makeshift mending circle. Each man brings some torn piece, a sock, a cuff, a patch for a jacket. You sit in a loose circle on old blankets spread across the ground, each one hunched over his small universe of stitches and frays. Someone starts a story about a stubborn horse they once owned, its tendency to escape fences and wander into neighboring fields. Another chimes in about a dog who would sneak into the kitchen and steal bread from the counter. The stories flow as your needles move, the slow, steady rhythm binding you together more surely than any uniform or rank. Every so often, a laugh rises brief and soft, as though everyone is aware of how easily laughter might shatter the thin shell of this moment's peace. You feel the tension in your shoulders loosen slightly, your breath deepening with each stitch, each quiet chuckle. You think about all the hands that taught you to sew, your mother's strong fingers guiding the thread, your grandmother's patient instructions at the wooden kitchen table. You remember the warmth of their voices, the smell of tea steeping nearby, the gentle murmur of a summer rain tapping against the roof. Now, each stitch is not just mending fabric, it is weaving echoes of those voices into the present, folding memory into the harshness of your current world. Each thread carries not just function, but a whispered promise of home, of softness, of a different life waiting beyond the fog of war. The afternoon light begins to wane, slipping through the trees. In long, golden strands, you hold a sock up to the light, examining the evenness of your stitches, feeling a small, quiet pride. Beside you, Jenkins carefully folds his newly patched sleeve, smoothing it with the flat of his palm, as if it were the finest linen. When the mending is done, you carefully pack your kit again. You fold each piece of thread, tuck away the needle, close the little scissor jaws with a soft click. You hold the kit in your hands for a moment, before slipping it back into your pocket, a small weight against your thigh. A reminder of the fragile strength hidden in quiet acts. You rise with the others, each man carrying his newly mended piece of clothing, each one moving a little more upright, a little more whole. The mending circle dissolves slowly, like mist under morning sun. You walk back toward your tent, the sewing kit bumping softly against your leg. You think of all the stitches still ahead, the ones you will place tomorrow, the ones waiting in letters yet to be written, the invisible ones that hold each man's spirit together in the long, silent stretches of night. You reach your cot and set your kit beside your cup and blanket. You run a finger along the folded fabric, imagining all the small acts of care carried out across centuries by hands like yours, farm wives darning socks in lamplight, sailors patching sails by moonglow, children learning their first stitches at a mother's knee. As the first stars begin to appear above the camp, you settle onto your cot, blanket drawn up to your chin, sewing kit resting near your heart. You close your eyes, breathing in the soft scent of wool and soap, listening to the fading murmur of the day, and as sleep tiptoes nearer, you wonder softly if each stitch carries a silent wish, how many small hopes might be sewn into the seams of this long, wandering life. The early morning is a hushed grey, like the soft lining of a winter coat. You lie still for a moment, listening to the muted sounds of camp life beyond the tent walls, the slow creak of a distant cartwheel, the gentle scrape of boots against frozen ground, the faint murmur of men moving through routines as steady as a grandfather clock's tick. You reach for your sewing kit before you even rise. The small, familiar bundle fits perfectly in your palm, its edges worn smooth from countless mornings like this. You cradle it against your chest for a moment, feeling the pulse of your own heart beneath the canvas walls. Rising carefully, you slip into your coat and step out into the pale morning. Frost dusts the ground like powdered sugar, and each breath curls from your lips in delicate ghosts. You walk slowly toward the mess tent, your sewing kit tucked inside your pocket, warm from the press of your fingers. Breakfast is a meager affair, a thin porridge that tastes of scorched oats and the echo of distant harvests. You sit on an overturned crate, your tin bowl balanced on your knees, your spoon moving in slow circles. Jenkins sits nearby, his breath puffing in soft clouds. Mills hums a low tune between bites, the sound weaving around you like a thread of smoke. After the last spoonful, you set the bowl aside and pull out your kit. Jenkins watches you, his eyes bright despite the weary lines etched deep at their corners. Back to the stitchwork, he asks softly. You nod, unwinding a spool of thread with careful fingers. The thread glows faintly in the weak morning light, a fragile line connecting you to every home you've left behind. Mills pulls off a wool sock and tosses it to you. Think you can give this old foot coffin another mile or two? He asks with a grin. You catch it gently, turning it over in your hands. A hole yawns open at the heel, the edges frayed like an abandoned nest. You set to work immediately, your fingers moving with a familiar rhythm. Needle dips in, thread loops through, needle rises as you mend. Mills starts telling a story about a market day back home. The smell of apples piled high, the chatter of women trading recipes, the slow, sticky drip of honey from a vendor's wooden spoon. His voice grows softer as he talks, each word tinged with a gentle homesickness that feels as old as the hills. Jenkins chimes in, recounting a memory of his mother's sewing circle. He describes the women gathered around a big oak table, the steady clink of teacups, the shushing of scissors cutting through yards of bright fabric. He remembers his mother humming under her breath, a sound as comforting as a quilt on a winter night. Your needle keeps moving, stitching not just fabric, but all these fragments of home into the cold morning air. You feel their stories, not themselves, around your wrist, weaving invisible bracelets of shared memory and longing. After finishing Mills's sock, you pass it back with a gentle pat. He holds it up triumphantly, examining your stitches like a jeweler inspecting a rare gem. With a laugh, he tugs it on, wiggles his toes, and offers you a mock salute. Next comes Jenkins's sleeve. The cuff has nearly separated, hanging by a few stubborn threads. You work in silence, your fingers sliding smoothly over the rough wool. Each pull of the thread a quiet reassurance. You are still here. You are still whole. Around you, the morning unfolds slowly. A few soldiers pass by, nodding in quiet acknowledgement of your work. One stops to ask if you might look at a torn satchel later. Another simply leaves a pair of mittens near your feet, a silent plea for mending. As the sun rises higher, its pale warmth barely touches your skin. You shift occasionally, your legs stiff from sitting on the crate. Jenkins offers you half a biscuit, and you nibble it slowly, crumbs catching in the folds of your coat. When the sleeve is done, Jenkins slides his arm into it with a reverent care, as though it was spun from silk instead of worn wool. He flexes his wrist, smiles faintly, and gives you a small nod. The morning drifts onward. You move to the edge of camp, near a low stone wall where a few wildflowers cling bravely despite the frost. You settle there with your sewing kit, grateful for the small shield of solitude. You pull out a thin piece of muslin you've been keeping, for yourself a patch meant for your own coat. The tear has been growing slowly, a quiet reminder that even your hands cannot always keep up with the world's small demands. As you stitch, your mind wanders. You remember the smell of your grandmother's cedar chest, the soft sigh of linen sheets in summer, the tender hush of a baby's breath as they sleep on your lap. Each stitch pulls these images closer, weaving them into the grey tapestry of your present. A breeze picks up, rattling the dry seed heads of the flowers. You pause, needle hovering, and listen to the whisper of the wind. It sounds almost like an old friend calling from across a field, a voice so thin you might mistake it for your own thoughts. You close your eyes for a moment, allowing the sound to settle around you. Your breath deepens, your fingers slacken, and for a few heartbeats, the war feels as distant as the stars still clinging to the morning sky. When you open your eyes again, you finish your patch with slow determination. You tie off the thread, running your thumb along the seam, feeling the tiny ridge of each stitch. You fold the muslin neatly and tuck it back into your kit, the tiny victory warming your chest. Returning to camp, you find Mills and Jenkins sharing the remains of a loaf of bread. They wave you over, and you join them, easing down onto an overturned bucket. You break off a piece, chewing slowly, each bite a quiet offering to the day's unfolding hours. Jenkins pulls out a letter from his pocket and begins to read it aloud. It's from his sister, describing her garden, rows of beans curling toward the sun, morning glories crawling along the fence, the smell of damp soil after a gentle rain. You listen closely, each detail a thread pulling you back to a softer, slower world. Mills leans in, his eyes bright, and asks questions about the garden. What color are the flowers? Do the beans have blossoms yet? You find yourself imagining the garden to the humming of bees, the coolness of dew on your fingers as you pick a tomato at dawn. When Jenkins finishes reading, a gentle silence spreads among you, like a blanket laid carefully over a restless child. You sit together, each man staring at the small piece of earth in front of him, letting the imagined garden bloom quietly in your minds. After a while, Mills rises to wash the cups. You and Jenkins linger, your sewing kit resting against your thigh, a soft weight. You open it, running your fingers along the folded threads, each color a small universe of possibility. Jenkins asks if you'll help mend a small tear in his scarf. You nod, and he hands it over, the fabric warm from his body. You begin at once, the needles slipping in and out like a tiny swimmer moving through still water. As you work, Jenkins begins to hum again. You recognize the tune, this time a lullaby you heard long ago, a song about stars and safe harbors and lanterns left burning on kitchen tables. The melody drifts around you, mixing with the scent of frost and the faint hint of smoke from a nearby fire. You pause occasionally to listen, your hands resting gently on the scarf, as though the fabric itself might be breathing along with the song. When the scarf is mended, Jenkins drapes it around his neck, tugging it snugly beneath his chin. He looks at you with eyes that are almost shy and mutters a quiet thanks. You smile, tucking your needle back into its loop, folding the thread into its tiny corner. The sun has begun its slow slide downward, stretching shadows across the camp. Like long fingers, you pack up your kit, slipping it into your pocket with a soft pat, as though reassuring an old friend. You stand, stretching your back, and gaze around the camp. Men are beginning to gather for the evening meal, the smell of stew drifting lazily through the air. You feel the faint pull of hunger, but also a deep, slow warmth blooming in your chest. The quiet satisfaction of small repairs, of quiet service, of hidden care. As you walk toward the mess tent, your hand strays to your pocket, brushing against the sewing kit. You feel its shape beneath the rough wall, a small, constant companion in a world too vast and shifting to grasp all at once. At the tent entrance, you pause and look up at the sky. The first stars are beginning to appear, pinpricks of light that seem to watch over you from unimaginable distances. You take a slow breath, feeling the cool air slip into your lungs, the scent of earth and wool and wood smoke mixing in your mind like an old hymn. and as you step forward to join the others, you wonder softly if each man's quiet acts of mending, each patch, each stitch, each soft word were stitched together, might they form a tapestry strong enough to hold the weight of all this wandering, all this waiting, all this hope. Night has folded itself softly round the camp, as though some giant hand has gently drawn a heavy wool blanket across the earth. You lie awake in your cot, your sewing kit resting close by, as if it too needs the comfort of your presence. Outside the tent, the world has quieted into its gentle nocturnal hum, the occasional cough from a nearby tent, the distant crackle of a dying campfire, the subtle footfalls of the night watch drifting past like cautious phantoms. You turn slightly, feeling the rough wool of your blanket against your cheek. Your fingers find the edge of the sewing kit in the dark, tracing the soft corners as though reading a Braille story only you can understand. Earlier that evening, before you lay down, you spent an hour rethreading your needles by the dim glow of a lantern. The flame flickered with each passing draft, making the shadows on the tent walls shiver like thin ghosts. You handled each needle as though it were a tiny relic, delicate, necessary, almost sacred. You remember Jenkins sitting nearby, polishing his boots in silence. Mills had been snoring lightly even then, curled up with a thin blanket, his hat pulled down low over his brow. You had felt the hush around you like a warm current, each man wrapped in his small sphere of private thoughts, with each needle threaded. You had felt a little piece of the coming day become more manageable, as if readiness itself could be woven into the thread, folded away for when it would be needed most. Lying there now, you listen to your own breathing, the slow in and out, each rise and fall like the gentle tide washing over a forgotten shore. You wonder, idly, how many stitches you have made since arriving at camp. Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. Each one a tiny vow, a silent promise to hold something together a little while longer. As your thoughts drift, you recall a morning long before the war. You had sat on a porch swing at home, a fresh tear in your trousers from climbing an apple tree too quickly. Your grandmother had appeared, her hair pulled into a tight bun, her hands cradling a small sewing basket. She hadn't scolded you. Instead, she had simply sat beside you, gently lifting your pant leg to examine the rip. You remembered the softness of her fingers, the way the thread had moved through the fabric so gracefully it seemed almost alive. You remember the way she had hummed, low and soothing, as though each note were a thread she used to stitch calm into your restless young mind. The memory glows now, warm and flickering, like a lantern swinging in a gentle breeze. Eventually, you drift into a light sleep, though it is more a floating than a descent. You hover in that space where dreams and memories curl around each other, where time loses its sharp edges. When you wake, the sky is just beginning to pale at the edges, a shy blue seeping into the deep velvet of night. You push yourself up slowly, your joints stiff and your fingers momentarily numb. You rub them carefully, feeling each knuckle awaken. You reach for the sewing kit, almost by instinct, unrolling it across your lap. The familiar sight steadies you, spools of thread in different muted shades, your small scissors dulled at the tips, each needle gleaming faintly in the early light. You begin the morning ritual. You check each needle, feeling for burrs or bends. You test the threads, pulling gently to ensure they will hold under strain. You refold the small scraps of fabric you keep tucked inside, old patches you might need in a hurry. As you work, Jenkins stirs beside you, his eyes opening slowly as though surfacing from a deep, silent pool. He watches you for a moment before murmuring, Can't sleep without hearing that needle song anymore. You smile faintly, your hands pausing briefly before continuing their careful inspection. Mills stumbles awake next, muttering about dreams of warm kitchens and endless loaves of bread. He groans, stretches, and pulls his blanket up again, defying the morning for a few more stolen moments. You finish tending to your kit and set it aside. Rising, you step outside, greeted by the first faint sounds of a waking camp. A few soldiers trudge toward the mess tent, boots scraping, breath ghosting out in soft clouds. You follow slowly, feeling the ground firm beneath your feet. The morning meal is simple, as always. Hard bread, a smear of something resembling jam, and a tin of lukewarm coffee. You take your portion, find a flat rock near the edge of camp, and settle in as you eat. You watch the sunrise creep across the field beyond, each blade of grass catching the light like a tiny mirror. You chew slowly, each bite grounding you in this moment, this day, this fragile life. When your meal is done, you return to the tent to find Mills waiting with a small pile of mending, a pair of socks, a sleeve, and a tattered handkerchief. He places them in your hands wordlessly, his eyes tired but hopeful. You sit cross-legged. On your cot, your sewing kit open before you like a tiny altar. You choose a thread, measure it carefully against your arm, and begin. The sock first, the heel worn so thin it might as well be made of mist. You anchor the thread, sliding the needle through in slow, practiced arcs. Each stitch feels like a quiet heartbeat, a pulse of intention in a world otherwise too chaotic to grasp. Next comes the sleeve. You turn it inside out, smoothing the frayed edge against your palm. As you stitch, you remember watching your mother mend your father's work shirts after long days in the fields. Her fingers had always moved swiftly, but gently, as though each stitch might also soothe the day's burdens from his shoulders. When the sleeve is finished, you lift it up, turning it this way and that, examining the seam in the pale light. Mills watches you, his gaze softening, and when you hand it back, he clutches it to his chest as if it were a letter from home. Last is the handkerchief delicate, its corners embroidered long ago by hands you'll never meet. You mend the tear with almost reverent care, each movement slow and deliberate, as though you're mending not just cloth, but some quiet spirit that lives within it. Once all three pieces are done, you fold them neatly and stack them beside Mills's cot. He stepped out, so you leave them with a small note. Whole again, your quiet tailor. You pack up your kit again, each item slipping into its place as naturally as a star into the night sky. You set it aside, stand, and stretch. Your body groans in protest, but there's also a quiet satisfaction in the soreness, a gentle reminder of all you've held together. The rest of the morning drifts by like a slow river. You help Jenkins, sort supplies, your fingers brushing against tins of beans and small parcels of dried fruit. You trade quiet jokes about what it would be like to eat a fresh peach again, the juice running down your chin, the sweetness almost too sharp to bear after so much salt and tin. Afterward, you wander to the edge of camp, sewing kit tucked in your pocket. You find a large stone under an old tree, its roots curling around the earth like an old hand. You sit there, feeling the rough bark against your back, the dappled sunlight slipping across your face. You take out your kit and begin to stitch a small patch for yourself, not because something is torn today, but because the act itself soothes you. Each loop and knot is a slow exhalation, each tightening of thread a moment of calm drawn from the deep well of your spirit as you work. You listen to the breeze weaving through the branches above. You imagine the sound as a quiet song, one that only those who truly listen can hear. You let it wash over you, each note settling into your bones like warm tea. You pause occasionally to look around, the sway of grass in the breeze, a crow perched on a fence post, a stray dog nosing around for crumbs. The world feels suspended. Here, as if you've stepped outside of time, into a pocket where only softness and breath exist. When the patch is finished, you fold it carefully and tuck it into a small cloth pouch inside your kit. You close the kit slowly, running your fingers over the worn surface before slipping it back into your pocket. As you rise to return to camp, you feel a subtle shift within, a lightness that isn't about victory or defeat, but about the simple, tender act of making something whole, if only for a moment. Back at camp, men gather for the evening meal, voices low and full of that hushed warmth that only truly shared hardship can bring. You find Jenkins and Mills sitting together, an extra space saved for you between them. You slip in, your shoulders brushing theirs, the three of you forming a small, sturdy triangle of quiet companionship. The meal is plain, thin soup, a crust of bread. But you savor each spoonful, each bite a small ceremony of gratitude. After dinner, the sun melts into the horizon, smearing gold and violet across the sky. A hush settles over the camp. A few men hum, some write letters, others stare into the fading light as though searching for home in its colors. You pull your sewing kit from your pocket one last time for the day, setting it on your knee like a small companion watching the twilight with you. You don't open it now. You simply hold it, feeling the warmth from your body seep into it, imagining the stories it holds within its silent folds. As the first stars blink awake overhead, Jenkins begins to hum that lullaby again. You lean back slightly, eyes half closed, letting the gentle melody weave through you. Mills joins in softly, his deep voice grounding the higher notes, like roots anchoring a sapling. You feel your breath deepen, your mind soften around the edges. The kit on your lap feels like a small heart beating along with your own. Story 4. The salt crust on your cheeks, letters home, canteens, and campfire murmurs. You sit cross-legged near a dying campfire, the last coals glowing like quiet stars in a shallow sky of ash. Around you, the others have slipped into their bedrolls, some snoring lightly, some turning and sighing in their sleep. The night air clings to your skin, a cool veil carrying the scent of wood smoke and damp earth. In your lap rests a letter, folded so many times the creases look like pale scars. You run your thumb along the edge before slowly unfolding it. The paper soft and fragile as old linen. The handwriting, slightly uneven, feels like a familiar hand pressed gently against your cheek. You can almost hear the soft scrape of pen against paper, the pauses for thought, the moments when the writer glanced out a kitchen window or paused to sip cooling tea. You read the first few lines slowly, as though each word must be tasted, each phrase a small piece of hard candy melting on your tongue. We miss you at supper. It begins. Your place at the table always feels too quiet, as if waiting for a laugh that doesn't come. Your eyes linger on that sentence, feeling the warmth and the ache wound together like two strands of thread. You imagine your mother or father, or perhaps a sister, standing in that kitchen, the pot bubbling softly on the stove, the clatter of a spoon against a chipped bowl. You imagine the hush that settles in a home when someone is missing, the quiet that creeps into corners like a gentle fog beyond the fire's faint glow. The trees murmur in the breeze, their branches brushing against each other like old friends sharing secrets. You close your eyes, listening to that soft forest song, letting it braid itself into the voice you hear in the letter. You take a slow breath, feeling the air slide down into your lungs, heavy and cool. You continue reading. The letter meanders. Through small stories, the cat that curled up on your old bed, the neighbor's boy who lost a tooth, the smell of bread baking at dawn. Each line is a small door swinging open, revealing a room you know so well you could find your way through. It blindfolded. You fold the letter carefully, tucking it back into the envelope as though returning a bird to its nest. You slip it into the inner pocket of your jacket, close to your chest, where its words can echo softly against your heartbeat, rising slowly. You walk to the edge of the clearing, the grass cold and slick beneath your boots. You look up at the sky at stars so sharp they seem to pierce the night's skin. Somewhere beyond those stars lies the kitchen, the supper table, the small flickering lamp in your childhood room. You turn back toward the fire and see Jenkins shifting in his sleep, murmuring fragments of a dream. Mills has one arm thrown over his eyes, his breath coming in slow, deep waves. You step back into the circle of warmth, crouching to adjust a log, stirring up a few stray sparks. The flames revive slightly, casting long, thin shadows that reach toward the tent walls like fingers seeking comfort. You retrieve your canteen, feeling its weight, the metal cold against your palm. You uncap it, take a careful sip. The water tastes faintly of tin and earth, but it slides down your throat like a whispered lullaby. You tip your head back, feeling each drop spread warmth through your chest, as if liquid starlight is seeping into your bones. After a moment, you cap the canteen and set it beside your foot. You sit there in the hush, the world narrowing to the small circle of orange glow, the crackle of the logs, the rhythm of your own breathing. Your thoughts drift to the countless canteens that have carried water over centuries, the clay flasks of ancient soldiers, the bamboo gourds of desert caravans, the carved wooden bottles of pilgrims trudging toward distant shrines. You imagine each vessel, each careful sip taken under foreign moons, each quiet prayer muttered before dawn. In this small circle of light, you are just another pilgrim, your canteen a humble chalice, holding the promise of tomorrow's march. You stretch out your legs slowly, feeling the ache of old blisters and bruises singing softly beneath your skin. You lean forward to rub your calves, your fingers pressing gently into the tender knots. Each touch is a conversation, a quiet apology to your own body. Thank you for carrying me, for enduring each step, each muddy mile as the fire settles into a deeper glow. You lean back on your elbows, head tilted to the sky. You let the stars wash over you, each point of light a tiny pulse of memory and possibility. You think again of the letter in your pocket, of the soft scrawl and its tender updates. You wonder what words you might send back, what small tokens you could tuck into an envelope to drift across the distance and land softly in a waiting hand. You imagine describing the fire, the way its warmth flickers against your skin, the shape of the smoke as it curls into the moonlit sky. You imagine describing the hush of the forest, the muted drum of your own heartbeat as you lie awake listening to Mills snore. Perhaps you would mention the taste of coffee in the morning, thin and smoky, or the scrape of a tin spoon against a metal bowl. You might describe the ache that blooms in your shoulders after a long march, or the small comfort of sliding into your bedroll at night, even when the cold gnaws at your toes. You think about these things, and the thought itself becomes a quiet, kind of letter, a soft, drifting note carried by the night air to no one and everyone all at once. Somewhere beyond the trees, an owl calls, its voice low and round, echoing off the trunks like a slow ripple on a still pond. You close your eyes, listening, imagining its wide wings slicing through the darkness. You reach for your canteen again, feeling the cool metal, the small dents that mark each fall, each hurried scramble. You unscrew the cap and pour a small measure of water into your palm, watching it catch the firelight before you drink it slowly, savoring each drop as you sit there. You notice a small scrap of cloth near the fire, perhaps part of someone's bandage or a piece of an old handkerchief. You pick it up gently, turning it over in your hands. The fabric is worn, the edges frayed like a memory that has been handled too many times. You fold it carefully, smoothing it on your knee, then tuck it into your jacket pocket beside the letter. You feel a curious comfort in the simple act, as if adding this forgotten piece to your collection of small treasures knits you more firmly to the present moment. You lean forward, feeding the fire one last time before you retire. The flames catch quickly, licking up the sides of the log with a quiet, eager sound. You watch them dance for a while, feeling your eyelids grow heavy, each blink stretching longer until the world softens into a quiet blur. Finally, you rise, brushing off the seat of your trousers, and step into your tent. Mills has rolled onto his side, his hat now crumpled against his cheek. Jenkins mutters something in his sleep, a word you can't quite catch, as though he's speaking to someone. Far away, you move carefully to your cot, your movements slow and deliberate, as if underwater. You set your canteen beside your pillow, fold the letter once more before tucking it close to your heart, and ease under your blanket. You lie there for a while, feeling the weight of the day slide from your shoulders, listening to the gentle rhythm of the others breathing around you. Your thoughts flicker like the last coals in the fire, small images of home, of warm kitchens, of open fields shimmering under the summer sun. You feel the thin edge of a smile touch your lips before sleep finally folds you into its quiet embrace. Tomorrow will come with its hard edges, its endless steps, its quiet burdens. But tonight, you are wrapped in the soft murmur of old letters, the echo of distant kitchens, and the faint glow of stars peeking between the trees. The morning breaks slowly, as if reluctant to disturb the earth's stillness. You awaken to a faint pale light seeping through the canvas of your tent, a delicate glow like a whisper shared only with the sleeping world. Outside, a cool breeze stirs the leaves, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine. You stretch beneath your blanket, the rough wool pressing softly against your skin. Your hands find the edge of your jacket, where the letter from home is nestled in the inner pocket, warm from your body. You pause a moment, tracing the worn edges of the envelope, imagining the hand that penned those words. Rising quietly, you step from your cot. The camp is slow to stir, a gentle chorus of shifting bodies and murmured greetings. The muted sounds of men preparing for the day drift in through the tent flap, the clink of mess tins, the scrape of boots against frozen ground, the soft murmur of voices low and careful. You join the quiet procession toward the mess tent, the chill in the air drawing a soft shiver down your spine. The ground beneath your boots is still damp, the grass flattened and shimmering with dew. As you walk, your eyes catch the steady rhythm of the camp, men moving like shadows. Heads bowed against the chill, hands tucked deep into pockets or clutching steaming mugs. The smell of coffee drifts out from the mess tent, rich and bitter, mingling with the faint aroma of burnt oats and stale bread. You take your place in line, the tin bowl in your hands, cool and slightly rough. The cook ladles out a thin porridge, steam rising in pale curls, carrying the faint scent of cinnamon and molasses. You sit on an overturned crate, balancing your bowl on your knees. The porridge is bland but warm, a quiet comfort in the slow beginning of a long day. Around you, conversation is sparse, but steady brief exchanges about the weather. The next march, the male Jenkins sits nearby, his breath puffing white in the cold morning air. He unwraps a small package, revealing a crust of bread and a few slices of dried meat. The two of you share a nod, the silent language of men who understand each other without words. As you eat, you think again of the letter from home, the small stories it carried, the cat on the windowsill, the neighbor's boy learning to ride his bike, the smell of bread baking at dawn. Those quiet details ripple through your mind, softening the edges of the day ahead. After breakfast, you return to your tent, the ground crunching lightly beneath your boots. Inside, you retrieve your sewing kit from its hiding place. The canvas pouch feels familiar in your hands, its weight a quiet reassurance. You unfold it carefully, revealing the neat rows of needles, spools of thread, and small scissors dulled. At the tip stop today, there is a new task awaiting you. A fellow soldier, Harris, has approached earlier with a torn uniform jacket, the shoulder nearly ripped clean from the seam. You take the jacket gently, inspecting the damage. The fabric is rough and stained, but the tear is clean, like a broken promise waiting to be mended. You set to work, your fingers moving slowly, deliberately. The needle slips through the torn fibers, weaving them back together stitch by careful stitch. The thread is a muted grey, chosen to blend with the worn wool. As you sew, you think of the countless uniforms patched and repaired by hands, like yours throughout history, from the soldiers of long ago wars to the quiet tailors in peaceful villages. The rhythm of your stitching becomes a steady mantra, a gentle heartbeat that steadies your mind. Around you, the camp hums with life, the clatter of tools, the shuffle of feet, the low murmur of conversation. Yet within your tent, there is a pocket of calm, a sanctuary carved out by needle and thread. As you work, Harris comes and goes, bringing other small mending requests. A ripped pocket here, a missing button there. You move from one task to the next, each one a small act of quiet care that knits the fabric of the day together. In the afternoon, a messenger arrives with fresh mail. You unwrap your own letters slowly, savoring each word like a delicate thread connecting you to home. One letter brings news of a new baby cousin. Another tells of the first blooms of spring in a distant garden. You share some of these letters with Jenkins and Mills, and together you imagine the scenes they describe. Gardens bright with flowers, kitchens warm with laughter, fields stretching wide under endless skies. The images settle over you like a soft quilt, a gentle comfort against the stark realities of camp life. Later, you help set up a small fire near the edge of the camp. The men gather around it as dusk falls, the flames flickering and casting long shadows. Stories are told in low voices, memories of childhood, hopes for the future, the quiet humor that survives even in hardship. You listen to the crackle of the fire, the soft laughter, the occasional song rising into the night. Your hands are busy, pulling thread through fabric as you mend a torn glove. The warmth of the fire seeps into your skin, a balm against the chill dot. As night deepens, you sit back and gaze up at the sky. Stars gleam overhead, distant and unchanging. You feel the weight of the day lift slowly from your shoulders, replaced by a calm stillness. The letter in your pocket, the needle in your hand, the fire at your side, these small things hold you steady. They are threads woven through the fabric of your life here, quiet reminders that even in the vastness of war, moments of tenderness endure. You wonder softly, as sleep begins to pull at your eyelids, about the stories yet to be written, of letters sent and received, of uniforms mended under moonlight, of quiet acts of care that ripple through time like gentle waves. The evening descends softly, folding over the camp like a familiar quilt, thick with the scent of wood smoke and earth. You sit near the dying embers of the fire, the last sparks floating up like fireflies lost in the vast, dark sky around you. The men settle in their blankets, their voices dwindling to murmurs and then to silence. Your fingers lightly trace the smooth metal of your canteen. Its cool weight, a steady reminder of the water it carries, a small, precious vessel of life. In a world that feels vast and uncertain, you take a slow sip, the cold liquid soothing your throat, and set it beside you carefully. Your eyes drift to the scattered scraps of paper and letters tucked inside your jacket pocket, warm from your body heat. They are whispers from home, Teeny, beacons of comfort that keep the ache of distance bearable. You unfold one, the paper soft and fragile, and read the familiar handwriting slowly, letting each word sink deep into your mind. Outside the circle of firelight, the night is quiet but alive. The trees sway gently, their branches whispering secrets to one another in the cool breeze. Somewhere, a night bird calls a single, mournful note that cuts through the stillness and lingers in the air. You think about the miles separating you from the soft glow of lamps in distant homes, the quiet kitchens, the worn tables, the voices you long to hear. Each letter you receive carries a fragment of that world, a thread connecting your present to a past filled with warmth and laughter. You carefully fold the letter and tuck it away, close to your heart. The act itself feels like a small ceremony, a way of honoring those delicate connections that endure despite the vast spaces and harsh realities. Turning your attention back to the fire, you watch as the flames curl and twist, casting dancing shadows on the faces of the men nearby. Jenkins hums softly, the tune weaving through the night air like a gentle lullaby. Mills listens quietly, eyes closed, his breathing steady and calm. You begin to unpack your sewing kit, the familiar weight and texture grounding you in the moment. Your hands move with practiced ease, pulling a needle from its slot, selecting a spool of thread that matches the worn fabric in front of you, a pair of gloves with fingers frayed from countless days of work. Each stitch you make is slow and deliberate, the needle slipping through cloth like a whisper. The rhythm becomes a meditation, a way to quiet the restless thoughts that sometimes crowd your mind during these long, still nights. As you sew, your mind drifts to the hands that once wore these gloves, hands that carried burdens, that cradled hope, that longed for peace. You imagine the warmth they once held, the stories they might tell if given voice. Near you, the fire crackles softly, the sparks rising to join the stars above. The sky is a deep indigo canvas, sprinkled with countless points of light that seem to watch over you with a quiet, steadfast presence. Time stretches and folds in this gentle space. Minutes and hours blur together as you work. The world outside the fire's glow fading into a soft haze of shadow and silence. You pause occasionally to listen to the steady breathing of the camp, to the distant call of an owl. to the faint rustle of fabric and movement in the tents around you. Each sound is a thread in the tapestry of the night, weaving a sense of belonging and calm. When your work is done, you fold the mended gloves carefully and set them aside, feeling a quiet satisfaction bloom in your chest. These small acts of care, so easily overlooked, carry a weight far beyond their size. You close your sewing kit gently, the worn fabric creaking softly as you roll it closed. The familiar scent of thread and cloth fills the air, mingling with the crisp night breeze that slips through the open tent flap. You settle back against a log near the fire, the cool wood pressing into your spine, grounding you to the earth. The firelight warms your face, the shadows flickering in soft patterns across your skin. Your thoughts turn again to home, to the letters, the voices, the places that exist only in memory and hope. You wonder how the people you love are faring tonight, what stories they might be telling, what dreams they might be chasing beneath the same moon and stars. The night deepens, wrapping the camp in a quiet embrace. Your breath slows, each inhale and exhale a gentle wave washing over you. The world becomes a soft, blurred edge of sound and sensation as your eyelids grow heavy. You allow yourself to sink into that place between waking and sleeping, a liminal space where memories drift and mingle, where the heart finds rest amidst the uncertainty. You rest your head back against the log, feeling the cool air mingle with the warmth of the fire. The night sky stretches endlessly above you, an infinite tapestry woven from light and shadow. In this moment, you are both here and elsewhere, anchored by the small comforts of a mended glove, a letter from home, a shared lullaby in the dark, and, as sleep finally draws you under, you carry with you the quiet hope sewn into every stitch, whispered in every letter, held in every breath. Asterisk, the hours pass like a slow river, winding gently through the night. Your mind drifts as you sit beside the fading firelight, each flicker of flame a soft pulse in the quiet dark. Around you, the camp breathes in slow rhythms, men shifting in their blankets, the whisper of fabric against canvas, the faint creak of wooden poles holding tents aloft. You rise quietly and stretch your limbs, feeling the gentle ache of muscles worked hard by the day's demands. The chill in the air seeps into your skin, but you welcome it, a crispness that sharpens your senses and anchors you to the moment. Walking softly to the edge of camp, you pause to gaze upward. The stars have deepened into a dense cluster of shining points, a vast celestial map that has guided travelers, dreamers, and wanderers for countless generations. You think of the men you share this camp with, each carrying stories, hopes, fears folded quietly beneath their uniforms. You imagine the letters they have written, the names they hold close, the soft spaces in their hearts carved out for home. Your thoughts wander to the canteen resting at your side, its metal surface cool beneath your fingers. You unscrew the cap and lift it to your lips, the water inside clear and sharp, a brief, refreshing bomb. You savor the sip slowly, feeling the liquid trickle down your throat, a quiet connection to the simple necessity of life. Beside you, a small pile of belongings lies neatly arranged, your sewing kit, a battered notebook filled with scrawled notes and sketches, the well-worn cap that keeps your head warm during cold nights. You sit again, pulling the notebook into your lap. The pages are soft and stained from use, each one a repository of memories, observations, quiet reflections. You trace the faded ink with your finger, letting the words and drawings carry you back to moments both distant and near. There is a sketch of the camp as it appeared on your first day there, rough outlines of tents and makeshift paths, the scattered equipment, the faces of men you barely knew then. You smile softly, remembering the awkward introductions, the shared meals, the growing camaraderie born from shared hardship. A few pages later, there is a drawing of a patch of wildflowers found. Near the edge of the forest, a splash of color amid the gray and green of the battlefield. You remember kneeling there, fingers brushing the petals, marveling at their fragile beauty in such a harsh place. You close the notebook and tuck it carefully away, feeling the weight of those memories settle into your bones like a gentle warmth. The fire has dwindled to glowing embers, the heat now a soft pulse beneath the ash. You gather a few dry twigs and add them to the coals, coaxing a small flame to life once more. The sparks dance upward, drifting into the night like tiny lanterns carried on the breeze. Nearby, Jenkins hums again, a low, soothing melody that seems to ripple through the air and wrap around you like a soft blanket. Mills listens with a smile, his eyes reflecting the firelight and something deeper, perhaps a memory, a hope, or simply the comfort of shared silence. You lean back against a sturdy tree trunk, its rough bark pressing into your shoulder, grounding you to the earth. The night sounds envelop you, the distant call of an owl, the rustle of leaves, the steady murmur of a nearby stream. In this quiet moment, the vastness of the world feels both immense and intimate, a place where small acts of kindness, like sewing a torn glove or writing a letter, ripple outward in ways unseen. You breathe deeply, the cool night air filling your lungs and calming your restless thoughts. You close your eyes briefly, imagining the soft glow of a lamp in a distant room, the murmur of voices sharing stories, the gentle rhythm of footsteps on worn floorboards. When you open your eyes, the camp is still, bathed in the silver light of the moon. The men sleep, their faces peaceful beneath blankets and hats, wrapped in dreams that carry them far from here. You take one last sip from your canteen, savoring the quiet grace of the moment. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, its own noise and haste, but for now, there is only this space of stillness, a thread of calm woven through the night. You rise slowly, brushing ash from your hands, and step back toward your tent. The flap falls softly behind you, shutting out the night sounds and enclosing you in a small, familiar world. You settle onto your cot, the rough canvas pressing gently against your skin. Your fingers find the letter in your pocket once more, tracing its edges before folding it carefully and placing it beside your pillow. Asterisk. Story 5. The Whispering Pages, a soldier's diary, a library tent, and the quiet power of words. Good evening, friends. As you settle under your warm blanket and dim the lights around you, let the gentle hush of this quiet story settle softly into your mind. Tonight, we step into a quiet corner of history, where, amidst the clamor of war, a soldier finds sanctuary not in the roar of battle, but in the whispering pages of a book. Imagine yourself walking slowly through a makeshift camp, the uneven paths, worn soft by countless footsteps. The scent of earth and faint wood smoke lingers in the cool morning air, wrapped in the faint, comforting aroma of old paper and ink. Before you, a canvas tent stands quietly, marked by a simple wooden sign swinging gently on a rope. Library tent. Inside, rows of battered books line rough shelves, their spines cracked and faded from time and travel. This quiet refuge holds the stories and wisdom of worlds far away from the dust and noise outside. You step inside, the flap falling softly. Behind you, the cool, musty air carries a peaceful hush. Shelves creak under the weight of books, each one a small treasure, a whispered promise of escape, knowledge, or comfort. A young soldier sits at a small wooden table, a diary open before him. His fingers trace the inked words as if touching a lifeline. Around him, the murmur of pages turning and soft footsteps blend into a gentle rhythm, a lullaby for the restless mind. He pauses, pen hovering above the paper, searching for the right words to capture the day's quiet moments, the letters he received, the friends he shared a meal with, the fleeting peace found between marches. You move closer, feeling the calm energy of the space, the gentle glow of a lantern casting warm pools of light that flicker softly against the canvas walls as you settle into a worn wooden chair. The soldier's voice becomes your guide, low and steady, weaving a tapestry of simple truths and subtle beauty. He writes of the slow dawns breaking over the camp, the tentative shoots of grass pushing through scarred earth, the steady camaraderie that grows in shared silence. He describes the ritual of readiness, small escape from harsh realities, where the turn of a page is a breath of fresh air, and the stories held within these books are quiet companions on long, difficult nights. Outside, the camp begins to stir, but here, within the library tent, time flows differently, slower, gentler, like the soft current of a forgotten stream. The soldier writes of letters exchanged, their ink-stained edges curling from the damp. He reflects on the weight these letters carry, snippets of home, tokens of love, fragments of normalcy in a world turned upside down. Each word penned is a thread connecting him to a life beyond the battlefield, a bridge spanning the miles and months. The diary pages hold confessions, hopes, and questions unspoken, aloud thoughts that drift quietly beneath the noise of war. Tucked carefully away in the margins, you imagine the soldier's hand moving steadily across the paper, each stroke a small act of defiance against the chaos surrounding him. You listen as he writes of the comfort found in words, the way stories can soothe a weary soul, like a gentle melody played on a well-loved instrument. The candle flickers beside him, casting soft shadows that dance quietly against the tense canvas. Outside, the distant rumble of activity continues, but inside this sacred space, peace reigns. You feel yourself relax deeper into this world, the words wrapping around you like a warm shawl, the quiet turning inward like the slow closing of a book at day's end. In this gentle sanctuary, you are invited to linger, reading between lines, hearing the whispered stories folded inside the diary's pages. The soldier's voice fades into a soft murmur as you drift, carried on the slow current of ink and paper to a place where, even in the darkest times, the human spirit finds light in the quietest of places. The morning light filters softly through the thin canvas of the library tent, casting pale patterns across worn wooden shelves and scattered stacks of books. Outside, the camp is already stirring. The distant clatter of boots, murmured greetings, carried on a gentle breeze, the faint scent of dew mingling with earth and wood smoke. You sit quietly on a creaking stool, the diary open in your lap, its pages filled with the careful script of a soldier who has learned to find sanctuary in the simple act of writing. The pen rests lightly in your fingers, poised to capture the slow unfolding of a new day, moments often overlooked, yet filled with quiet meaning. The soldier's voice, low and steady, begins to weave a story of dawn. It speaks of the thin, grey light slipping over the horizon, the world wrapped in a gentle hush, as if holding its breath between night and day. You imagine the camp awakening, tents rustling softly in the morning breeze, men stretching slowly, the sound of metal against canvas as gear is readied for the day's march. The soldier's words carry you through this gentle procession, each step measured, deliberate, filled with a calm sense of purpose. There is a tenderness in the way he describes these routine moments, the way a pot of coffee bubbles quietly over a small flame, the careful folding of clothes, the shared smiles exchanged in tired eyes. It is a portrait not of battle, but of life continuing quietly amidst the storm. Your fingers brush over the diary's pages as the narrative deepens. The soldier writes of a visit to the library tent itself, a place of whispered stories and hushed reverence. He describes the faces of men who come seeking solace, their hands tracing the spines of books as if touching old friends. He pauses to tell of a particular volume, its cover cracked and edges worn thin from countless readings, a collection of poems that speak of distant fields and slow rivers, of moments when time seems to pause and the world softens into something almost holy. The soldier's voice softens further as he recounts reading these poems by the flickering light of a lantern, the words wrapping around him like a gentle embrace, offering a brief reprieve from the harshness beyond the tent. You feel yourself sinking deeper into the calm, each phrase a gentle wave washing over your senses. The soldier's reflections are like soft footsteps in a quiet garden, leading you past rows of books and into the secret spaces where hope quietly blooms. The diary shifts then to the weight of letters, letters received and sent, folded and refolded, carried across oceans and battlefields. The soldier writes of the small rituals surrounding mail, the anxious wait, the quickened heartbeat on sight of familiar handwriting, the careful unfolding of fragile paper. You sense the longing beneath these words, the ache for home, for voices and faces left far behind, but also the resilience, the stubborn flicker of connection that defies distance and time. The soldier speaks of sharing these letters with friends, reading aloud snippets by firelight, the words becoming a bridge, linking each man to a world beyond the camp. These moments are sacred, a tapestry woven from hope and memory. Outside the tent, the world begins to hum with activity. Horses whinny softly, the shuffle of feet on dirt paths, the distant murmur of orders given and received. Yet inside, the library tent remains a sanctuary, its air thick with the quiet power of words. You close your eyes briefly, imagining the worn bindings beneath your fingertips, the scent of paper mingling with dust and wood. The soldier's voice becomes a lullaby, a steady cadence drawing you towards stillness. As you breathe deeply, the narrative slows, lingering on the small details, the curling edge of a page, the soft scrape of a pen, the quiet companionship found in shared stories. These moments become a gentle anchor, holding you steady as the world outside roils with uncertainty. The diary pages hold not just facts, but feelings, the subtle shades of loneliness, courage, and quiet determination that color each day. You feel these emotions as soft echoes in your own chest, a shared rhythm between past and present. Time stretches, folded gently like the delicate letters tucked away in pockets and packs. The soldier's words drift through the tent like a gentle breeze, stirring memories and dreams. You imagine yourself walking slowly through this space, touching the spines of books, hearing the faint rustle of pages turning, feeling the calm embrace of stories that outlast the chaos. Outside, the sun climbs higher, warming the earth, casting long shadows that shift and change with the passing hours. The soldier sets down his pen, closing the diary with a soft sigh. A a quiet moment of gratitude for the small sanctuaries found in words and quiet company. You linger in this peaceful space a moment longer, letting the calm wash over you like a gentle tide, before stepping back into the rhythm of the day, carrying with you the whispered stories that offer light amid darkness. Asterisk, the afternoon settles in with a gentle warmth, the sun filtering through the leaves and dappling the camp with soft, shifting light. You find yourself once again drawn to the library tent, that quiet refuge where the world feels paused, held in a delicate balance between memory and hope. Inside, the air is cooler, touched with the faint musk of old pages and worn leather. Shelves stretch upward, cradling countless stories that have traveled across continents and years. Each book a vessel carrying the whispers of distant times and places. You run your fingers along the spines, feeling the textures, the cracked leather of a well-loved novel, the smooth gloss of a newer volume, the brittle edges of a faded map tucked carefully between pages. A few men sit scattered on wooden benches, some poring over books with quiet concentration, others simply resting, eyes closed, breathing in the calm. Their faces are lined with weariness, yet softened by the small comfort these moments bring. You settle into a corner, a well-worn armchair inviting you with its faded fabric and gentle sag. A book lies open on your lap, its words weaving a soft tapestry of poetry and prose that seem to echo the quiet rhythms of the camp itself. Outside, distant sounds drift through the tent flap, the soft clip of hooves, the murmur of voices, the faint clang of equipment being prepared. Yet inside, the world has contracted to this small sanctuary where time slows and the heart can breathe. The soldier's diary, now closed beside you, holds the unspoken stories of days like this, the stolen moments of peace, the small acts of kindness, the fragile threads of humanity that endure even in the shadow of conflict. You imagine the hands that turned these pages, the eyes that sought refuge here, the quiet courage it takes to find softness amid hardship. As the light fades, toward evening, the camp grows quieter. Men drift back from their tasks, the hum of activity giving way to a gentle stillness. The library tent becomes a haven for those seeking a final respite. Before night fully descends, you close the book gently and rise, the quiet creak of the chair beneath you a soft punctuation. Stepping outside, the cool air wraps around you, carrying the scent of pine and the faint trace of smoke. The sky is painted with hues of lavender and deepening blue, stars beginning to peek through the gathering dusk. You look up, feeling the vastness of the night stretch endlessly above, silent witness to all the stories held within the camp. You walk slowly back to your own tent, the earth soft beneath your boots, each step a measured rhythm in the quiet. Evening, the familiar weight of your belongings grounds you, the promise of rest a gentle beacon. Inside, you settle onto your cot, the rough canvas cool against your skin. Your fingers find the diary once more, tracing the leather cover as if it were a talisman against the day's weariness. You open to a blank page, the pen poised once again to capture the subtle beauty of moments too easily overlooked, the hush of evening, the shared stories whispered under fading light, the enduring power of words to comfort and connect. As you write, the camp around you settles into a deep, peaceful silence. Outside, the stars blaze softly, their steady glow a quiet lullaby to the restless soul. And as your eyelids grow heavy, you hold close the gentle truth that even in the most turbulent times, the quiet places within us, the letters, the books, the whispered stories, offer a path back to peace. Night has fully settled over the camp now, a quiet blanket woven from shadows and soft sounds. The world outside your tent is hushed, the usual noises reduced to whispers and distant echoes. The steady rhythm of breathing from nearby bunks blends with the occasional crackle of a dying fire somewhere beyond the perimeter. You lie quietly on your cot, the rough canvas beneath you familiar and steady. Your fingers brush over the worn leather cover of your diary resting on your chest, a quiet companion through days marked by uncertainty and fleeting moments of peace. The lamplight flickers gently, casting soft pools of amber glow that dance quietly across the tent walls. Outside, the stars shimmer faintly through the small opening, endless and watchful. You open your diary slowly, the pages rustling softly like a lullaby, and your eyes trace the familiar ink words penned with deliberate care, capturing the small and sacred details of life here, tonight. You write of the power found in words, letters carried across oceans, books read beneath flickering lanterns, the gentle murmur of stories shared among friends. The act of writing itself is a kind of quiet rebellion, a way to hold on to humanity when the world seems determined to take it away. Each word is a thread woven into the fabric of your being, a testament to endurance and hope. You reflect on the library tent, a sanctuary amid chaos, where men come to find moments of calm, to lose themselves in pages that speak of peace, love, and faraway places. The smell of old paper, the weight of history held in each volume, feels like a balm against the harshness outside. You write of the camaraderie born in this quiet refuge, men gathered in whispered conversation, sharing poetry, stories, even song. These moments stitch together a fragile community, bound not by uniforms, but by the shared need for comfort and connection. The diary pages hold the stories of letters, exchanged, folded carefully, carried close, read and reread beneath starlit skies. They speak of mothers and fathers, children growing up without the soldier's presence, friends waiting patiently for news. Each letter is a lifeline, a fragment of home carried across time and distance. You pause your writing and close your eyes, imagining the faces behind those letters, the soft hands that folded them, the voices that spoke the words aloud, the quiet prayers whispered before sending them on their way. In this moment, the boundaries between here and there blur, and the heart stretches to hold both worlds. The camp settles deeper into night, the quiet punctuated only by the occasional rustle of a blanket or the soft sigh of sleep. You close your diary gently and tuck it beneath your pillow, a silent promise to carry these stories forward as your own breathing slows and the edges of consciousness soften. You carry with you the gentle truth that even in the darkest nights, the light of words and memory can guide you home. Asterisk, the night deepens, the world outside your tent wrapped in quiet shadows. Your breath is steady, a soft rhythm in the stillness. The faint glow of your lantern flickers gently, casting delicate patterns on the canvas walls. The smell of old leather and ink lingers in the air, mingling with the cool scent of pine drifting through the open flap. You reach out, fingers brushing over the diary's worn cover, feeling the familiar texture beneath your touch. Opening it, you turn to a blank page, ready to capture the delicate moments that fill this night, moments of silence, of reflection, of connection. Your pen moves slowly, tracing words that unfold like a quiet melody. You write of the faces you have come to know here, men bound by shared hardship, yet each carrying his own story, his own quiet hope. Their laughter and whispered conversations, Weave a soft tapestry of companionship in this otherwise lonely place. You remember a moment earlier that day, when a fellow soldier shared a passage from a favorite book, reading aloud as others listened, heads bowed, eyes closed. The words floated between you like a balm, soothing the weary spirit, stitching fragile bonds of comfort. You think of the letters exchanged, the carefully folded sheets, the faded ink, the tender notes tucked between pages, each letter a lifeline, a beacon of love reaching across the miles and months. In your mind, you picture the hands that wrote those letters, perhaps a mother cradling a pen, a sister pressing ink to paper in the quiet light of dawn, a child learning the shapes of words as the world outside turns. You write of the sanctuary, found in stories, the way they carry you beyond the barrenness of war into fields of green, rivers that sing, skies endless and blue. The pages hold dreams and memories, laughter and tears, all woven into the quiet fabric of hope. Outside the tent, the camp breathes softly. The steady murmur of sleeping men, the occasional rustle of shifting blankets, the distant song of a night bird, these sounds wrap around you like a lullaby. You pause, letting the pen rest. The world narrows to this small space, this gentle moment suspended between wakefulness and sleep. The diary, your companion through it all, holds the traces of 1,000 quiet stories, each one a thread in the tapestry of this shared journey. You close the book softly, placing it with care beside your pillow. Your eyelids grow heavy, the steady rhythm of your breath matching the slow, soothing cadence of the night. As you drift towards sleep, you carry with you the gentle power of words, their ability to heal, to connect, to hold us safe even when the world feels uncertain. And in that quiet darkness, you find peace. Asterisk, the stillness of night deepens around you, the camp wrapped in a gentle quiet that feels almost sacred. The flickering light of the lantern beside you softens, shadows stretching and retreating like whispered secrets. You lie on your cot, the canvas beneath you familiar and comforting, the weight of your diary resting lightly against your chest. You think again of the letters folded neatly in your pocket, the careful script, the warm words, the delicate scent that carries memories of home. Each letter is a tiny beacon, a thread that connects you to a life paused but not forgotten. The thought of those far away, going about their days beneath the same stars, fills you with a quiet warmth. Your pen moves again across the paper, slow and deliberate, tracing thoughts and feelings that are both deeply personal and shared by many who have walked this path before. You write of hope not loud or brash, but soft and steady, like the glow of dawn breaking through night's shadows. You reflect on the small moments that stitch days together, the quiet conversations by the fire, the careful mending of uniforms, the slow turning of pages in a well-worn book. These are the rhythms that hold the fabric of life intact when the world outside feels fractured as you write. Your mind drifts to the library tent, that sanctuary of stories and silent solace. You picture the shelves lined with books, the soft murmur of voices, the gentle turning of pages. Here, words become a refuge, a place to rest and dream even when sleep feels distant. You imagine the men gathered there, seeking peace in poetry, history, or tales of distant lands. Each book is a portal, a quiet passage to somewhere beyond the harshness of their days. The stories breathe life into tired spirits, whispering of resilience and beauty amid the chaos. The diary holds the memory of a particular evening when a friend read aloud a passage that spoke of quiet courage, a reminder that even in darkness, light endures. You write of how those words wrapped around you all like a soft blanket, knitting you together in shared strength. Outside, the night air is cool and still, carrying faint scents of pine and earth. The stars overhead blaze softly, countless and unwavering. You feel the vastness of the sky above, the gentle pulse of life surrounding you, and a profound sense of being part of something greater. You close your eyes briefly, letting the calm wash over you like a slow tide. The diary rests beside you, a quiet witness to this moment of peace. Your breathing slows, and the boundary between waking and sleeping begins to blur. The stories held within your diary, the letters carried close, and the whispered words shared by friends create a sanctuary within your mind. And as sleep finally takes hold, you carry with you the quiet assurance that even in the loneliest of places, the gentle power of words can guide you home.